Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Saturday everybody. It's the weekend, and so we do a deep dive into some of the topics we normally don't cover with regular weekly episodes, with a focus on foreign affairs. But first up for today, yesterday, Friday, state media reported that China's plan to raise the retirement age for the first time since 1978 has been approved by the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress. The plan will gradually increase the retirement age. For men, it will rise from 60 to 63, while for women, it will increase from 50 and 55 to 55 and 58, respectively. This phased change will begin on the 1st of January 2025 and unfold over 15 years. Extending working years is intended to counter the demographic challenges facing China, although it may heighten public dissatisfaction amid the economic downturn. Michelle Lam, Greater China economist at Société Générale SA, noted that the timeline for raising the retirement age is gradual, suggesting that policymakers have carefully considered the potential negative impacts. The new plan also includes a requirement that, starting 2030, workers must contribute to their pension accounts for longer periods before they become eligible for retirement benefits. The contribution period will gradually increase from 15 to 20 years. As we have discussed before, China's retirement age is one of the lowest globally, despite significantly increased life expectancy. Beijing hopes that a broader tax base and delayed access to pension benefits will alleviate the already tremendous financial strain on the pension system, as the country faces a rapidly aging population. Some analysts have warned in recent years that China's pension system, which is already not particularly generous, with some rural workers getting only a few dollars a day, was already not very sustainable. Bert Hoffman, a former World Bank country director for China, now teaching at the National University of Singapore's East Asian Institute, argues that the move helps China maintain economic productivity, expressing, quote, "Over the next 15 years, more and more better educated people will retire. You want to keep them in the labor force longer because they will still be productive," end quote. Other big economies are also trying to shore up pension systems and maintain economic productivity as people live longer and have fewer children. US Social Security estimates that without major changes, it cannot fully pay beneficiaries starting in 2034. France last year raised its retirement age to 64 from 62, triggering nationwide protests. The difference with China, however, is it's much less wealthy in per capita terms, and the rate of aging is much more rapid. By 2050, the United Nations projects 31% of Chinese will be 65 or older. By 2100, the share will be 46%, approaching half of the population. In the US, the share is expected to be 23% and 28% respectively. Though Chinese officials and analysts alike have long said that the country needs to raise retirement ages, the news came as a blow and even a surprise to many Chinese. Across social media platforms, middle-aged workers, especially those approaching retirement, expressed confusion and dismay about the plan. One popular post on Weibo read, quote, "Older people can't retire and younger people can't find jobs," end quote, referring to China's high youth unemployment. After the approval of the measure, state media outlets immediately published tables, charts, illustrations, and even an online calculator to help working Chinese people predict when they can retire. Cheng Haowei, a fellow at the Paul Tsai China Center of Yale Law School, speaking to US-based The Wall Street Journal, said it is rare for an important policy decision to get so much detail, who saw it as a sign that Chinese leaders expected pushback from the public. Quote, "The authorities were likely determined to push this retirement plan through and were likely aware of the unpopularity of the measure," end quote. Some argue, however, that this is all too little too late. Yi Fuxian, an outspoken researcher at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, expressed on the news, quote, "This pace is no different from kicking a political time bomb to future generations," end quote. Next up, we move through some key developments in China's foreign affairs work from this week. This week saw the 14th meeting of BRICS, with high-ranking officials responsible for security matters and national security advisors in St. Petersburg. China's top diplomat Wang Yi attended the meeting, where he emphasized the need for BRICS countries to, quote, "build consensus and strengthen cooperation due to the complex international security situation," End quote. He emphasized resisting, quote, double standards, end quote, and politicization of counterterrorism issues, and invited BRICS officials to visit Xinjiang. He also made the usual boilerplate statements like opposing unilateralism, building a multipolar world, and upholding an international order. During the meeting, Wang also attended a dialogue session between BRICS and so-called Global South countries and held bilateral meetings with senior national security representatives from Brazil, Egypt, India, Iran, Serbia, and other countries. The meeting also reviewed the work of the BRICS Counter-Terrorism Working Group and the Cybersecurity Working Group. We note too that during his visit on Thursday, Wang Yi confirmed that General Secretary Xi Jinping is going to go to Russia next month for another BRICS meeting. Xi's visit to Russia will be his second since the Kremlin sent troops into Ukraine in February 2022. Meanwhile, also this week, Premier Li Qiang made a trip to the Gulf region for a series of visits. Most notably, he met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, a Saudi business delegation, and the Secretary General of the Gulf Cooperation Council in Riyadh to discuss cooperation in several sectors, including energy, investment, and trade. Li reportedly told MBS that, quote, the two sides should further expand bilateral trade scale, deepen cooperation in traditional fields such as oil and gas, petrochemicals, and infrastructure construction, explore cooperation in emerging fields like new energy, information communication, digital energy, and green economy, encourage enterprises from both countries to invest and do business in each other's countries, and jointly maintain the stability of global industry and supply chains. End quote. During the visit, the two sides also signed mutual bilateral cooperation documents in areas such as technical vocation, education, and meteorology. In an exclusive interview with Hong Kong-based South China Morning Post last Saturday, the Saudi Minister for Industry and Mineral Resources expressed Riyadh's openness to expanding the use of the yuan in crude oil transactions. Riyadh has also flagged its intention to partner with companies such as Huawei to develop, quote, innovate smart solutions and leverage technologies for the fourth industrial revolution characterized by AI and the Internet of Things, end quote. In another notable development this year, the Saudi defense minister visited Beijing in July to discuss strengthening military ties between the two countries. In 2022, Saudi Arabia signed arms agreements worth $4 billion with China, including deals for advanced military technologies. Washington placed restrictions on arms sales to Saudi Arabia in 2021 over human rights concerns, restrictions which the White House is now preparing to lift. Then on Thursday, Li Qiang met with the President of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, to discuss the strengthening of bilateral relations between the two countries. With this trip, China is seeking to deepen its role and reinforce its ties in the region, particularly the Gulf Cooperation Council, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, where talks to establish a free trade agreement have been ongoing for several years now. Bilateral trade between China and the Gulf stood at $286 billion in 2023, according to Chinese customs data. China is one of the main importers of Gulf oil, which the Middle Kingdom is heavily reliant on imported fuel, importing about 201 million metric tons of crude oil and 18 million tons of liquefied natural gas from the GCC nations in 2023. Next up, we have one more development to cover, but just quickly, if you're enjoying today's video, don't forget to hit the like button. If you've not done so already and you want to be on top of these updates as they're released, maybe consider subscribing and hitting the bell notification, and sharing is also a tremendous help for growing the channel. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below for those who want to help keep the channel financially sustainable. Thank you so much. Finally, for today, US-based Bloomberg reports that at least 3 top investment bankers from different securities firms have been detained by Chinese authorities since August, quote, sending a chill through the industry, end quote. One of them, who used to oversee deal-making for Haitong Securities Co., fled the country via Laos and was arrested overseas about 2 weeks ago before being repatriated back to China in an incident widely publicized on state media. Bloomberg, citing unnamed sources, reports that Haitong and other state-backed brokerages recently asked many of their investment bankers to hand in their passports and seek permission for all business and personal travel plans. The requests followed private guidance from Chinese regulators. As the outlet points out, China is really turning up the heat on its army of 8,700 investment bankers. After being forced to take big pay cuts and adhere to other belt-tightening measures under Xi Jinping's years-long Common Prosperity campaign, which we've been following for some time now, the country's deal makers are now in the crosshairs of the nation's top graft buster. However, detentions of investment bankers and regulatory probes are raising questions about the future of China's $1.7 trillion brokerage industry and domestic capital markets activities, which have already slowed sharply. China's state-owned financial institutions have capped annual pay for senior staffers at 2.9 million yuan, $400,000, while recent pay cuts for onshore bankers at China International Capital Corp have been as much as 25% of their base salaries. Shen Meng, a director at Beijing-based boutique investment bank Chanson & Co., expressed to the outlet, quote, "All these crackdowns and restrictions will hurt the morale of financial workers," end quote, adding that the goal of the authorities is to, quote, "profoundly change the distribution of the profit pie in the entire financial industry," end quote. China had more than 8,700 investment bankers as of early September this year across 147 brokerages. Many of them are involved in capital markets activities, including IPOs and follow-on share sales. The combined revenue of securities firms in the country amounted to 203.3 billion yuan in the first half, official data showed, down 9% from a year earlier. But some argue this is all a good thing. Sun Jianbo, president and founder of Beijing-based asset manager China Vision Capital, said the industry consolidation and regulatory crackdown suggest China's going in the right direction to reshape its investment banks, telling Bloomberg, quote, "We don't need that many investment banks, and cutting redundant bankers is the first and necessary step in China to cultivate top-class investment banks. We'll inevitably see faster consolidation and potentially more personnel investigations in the future," end quote. Whether this will indeed be the fruits of these efforts, or whether the effect will be the deepening cooling across the sector and economy, only time will tell. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a lovely and restful Saturday. Have a good weekend, and I will see you all on Monday.